Welcome everyone to part 3 of this tutorial series where we're creating this cave troll in Blender. So in parts 1 and 2 we sculpted and modeled the cave troll, and so this is where we left off in part 2. So all the modeling is done, and in this part we're going to do the lighting, and we're going to do the materials and rendering and a little bit of compositing to create the final finished render. Now I am going to be using one texture and Hdri, so the links will be in the description if you'd like to download the same Hdri and the same texture that I'm going to be using. So over here on 3D textures, I'm going to be downloading the Surface Imperfection Scratches 001. So right down over here, you can click on download all the maps. And then when you click on that, it's going to take you to a Google Drive, and you can just click right here and then just click on the download button right there. And then also on Polyhaven, I'm going to be downloading this Hdri. So I'm just going to be downloading the 1K version, and I'm also going to download it as an HDR, and then you can just click on download. And this is going to help us to get very realistic lighting. Alright, so once you've downloaded those textures, let's first start by adding in the Hdri lighting. So I'm just going to click right over here on the world properties. And then also real quick, I am going to be using the Cycles render engine because Cycles is more realistic. You could do this in Eevee if you want to, but I would recommend using Cycles. So then let's go right over here to the world, and right over here on the color, I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to click on environment texture. Then you can click on open to open up the Hdri. And then just select the Hdri that you're going to be using. This is the one that I downloaded, and then I'm just going to click on open image. So let's also press Shift A, and I'm going to add a camera. So add a camera, and then I want to move the camera right about here. So I'm just going to move my view right about here, and then I'll press Control Alt Numpad 0, and that's going to hop the camera to where we are. And I also want the image to be very high quality. So on the Y here, I'm going to do 2560 by 2560. You could do also like 1920 by 1920, really whatever you want to do, and then I'll render it as 100%. So this is going to be a nice, large, high quality image. Now also we can move the camera around, so you can press G to grab. You can also press G and double tap Z to move the camera in and out. Now also I want to change the focal length of the camera because I think that if you turn the focal length up, it actually makes the sculpt look a little bit better. So just select the camera and then click over on the camera settings. And then the focal length right here, I'm going to change this up to like an 80. So if you turn it way down and then you zoom in, basically you can see that now it almost gives like a fisheye effect. And of course that's way too small. But if you change this up to like 200, something really big, then it's almost going to have like an orthographic look. So I'm just going to set it to 80. I think that looks a little bit better. Basically it makes everything look a little bit more flat, but I do think it just makes it look a little bit nicer. You can kind of see it better. You can kind of see his shoulders a bit better. Now also I'm going to press Control B and drag a box around the camera. That way, when I press Z and move my mouse up to go into rendered mode, it's only going to render what's in the camera view. So that is really great. So we've added in the Hdri, so now let's do some of the other lighting. So I'm going to press Shift A, and I'm going to add a plane. We're going to be using the plane lights. Now, if you're using the Eevee render engine, then you can just go down here to light and add an area light instead. I'm going to press R to rotate, X on the X-axis, actually Y on the Y-axis, and I'm going to type in 90 and enter, and then we can also scale this down and then scale it on the Z-axis. So basically we're just making a rim light for the cave troll. So I'm just going to move this over here, just kind of over here, kind of on the back of the cave troll, maybe just rotate it slightly over so it's pointed at the side of the cave troll. Then right over here on the material, I'm going to click on new, and I can just call this light. And then right over here on surface, I'm going to change this to an emission, and that way it's going to be emitting light. Now if we go into rendered mode on the camera here, I'm going to turn the strength up to like 50 so it's pretty bright. And then we can also scale this down a little bit, and you can see it's starting to add some light there on the side of the cave troll. You might need to move this over a little bit so that you can see it a little bit better. Now I also want this rim light to be going around the cave troll, so I'm going to bring this one down a little bit, and then I'll press Shift D to duplicate, R to rotate, and G to grab and move it up a bit, and then Shift D and R to rotate, and we're just going to move that right in there. So we basically have a rim light going all the way around on the side of the cave troll. Now that might also be a little bit too bright, so I might change this just down to like a 30, so it's not quite as strong, maybe even like a 15. We can play around with this later, especially once we set up the material. Right now this is white, it's just a white material, so it's a little bit hard to actually tell how bright this is because white is going to reflect light a lot, so we can play around with the strength of that later as well. Now I also want to add a main light, so let's do that. And I'm going to add another plane. We can just move this plane over and then let's just rotate it by 90 degrees, just up like that. Now I also want this to be a little bit more of a circular shape, so I'm going to press Ctrl 2, that's going to add the subdivision surface, and then we can just click on new to add a new material. Now this one I'm going to call light 2. This is actually going to be the main light, and we can just kind of rotate it and stick it right there, pointed at the cave troll. So let's click on this surface here, and we're going to change it to an emission material again, and let's go into rendered mode. Now this one I think I'll just turn up to like a 10 or something like that. Again, we can play around with this later. And then also you could just make it a slightly yellow color or a slightly blue color if you like that. I'm going to make this a slightly yellow color, and then if you actually click on one of the rim lights, I'm going to make this one a slightly blue color. So the rim lights are going to be slightly blue, and then the main light is going to be slightly yellow. All right, so that is good for the lighting for now. So I'll just press Ctrl S to save again, and then let's click over on the shading tab and we can set up the material. So I'm just going to go into rendered mode, and then we can just click on new, and then right here we can just call this cave troll skin. Cave troll skin. All right, so I'm going to be adding in that image now. So I'm going to press Shift A, and I'm going to search for an image texture. We'll just drop it down here, and then you can just click on open. And then once you downloaded that surface imperfection texture, you're going to get a zip file, and you just need to extract the zip file. Now there's going to be a bunch of different textures, but the one that I want to use is the scratches roughness. So just find the roughness one and then click on open image to open it up. And then also, before we get any further, I'm going to be using the Node Wrangler add-on just so that we can preview the different nodes. So if you don't have the Node Wrangler add-on enabled, then just click on edit and then click on the preferences. And then right over here on the add-ons, on the search here, you can just start to type in node and then check mark the Node Wrangler add-on, and I'll show you how to use this in the video. All right, so with that turned on now, what you can do to preview different nodes is you can hold down the Control and Shift key and then click on the node, and that's going to preview it. So you can see that our mapping is really messed up. That doesn't look good at all. And that's because, of course, this is a sculpt. So what I want to do with this selected is I'm going to press Control T. That's using another feature from the Node Wrangler. And that's going to add the texture, coordinate, and mapping nodes. And that's going to plug it up to the scratches. Now, instead of using the UV, I want to use the object mapping. So I'm going to plug the object into the vector. And you can see that it's looking a little bit better, but it's still a bit messed up. What I want to do is right here, I want to change this flat to a box, and then I'm going to change the blend value to 0.2. And you can see that it's not going to use UVs now or anything like that. It's just going to take the texture and place it all around evenly, and it looks really quite nice. And then where it places the seams, it's going to use the blend value to blend the seams so that it looks seamless. So we are going to be using these scratches to add more detail to the skin. Now also, the scratches are a little bit big and I do want them to be a little bit smaller. So on the mapping here, I can just click on the scale, drag down, and then let go, and that's going to change all of the scale values at the same time. I'm going to change this to 1.3, and that way you can see that the scratches are just a little bit smaller. So I want a lot more scratches. I don't just want this many scratches. I want quite a bit more. So I'm going to take all three of these nodes and I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate and just bring them right up here. And then also you can delete the texture coordinate and then just plug the object up to the vector, because we don't actually need a bunch of texture coordinate nodes. We can just use one. So now I'm going to Control Shift and click on this one right here. So this one, I want to change it a little bit because I don't want it to be exactly the same as this one. So what I'm going to do is I can change the rotation. So I'm going to click, drag down, and then I can drag back and forth. And you can see that's going to change the rotation of those scratches. Now to preview the scratches a little bit better, you can press Z and move your mouse down to go into the material preview, and then just click, drag down, and then you can drag back and forth, and you can see that it's going to change where the scratches are. So I just want to change them so that they're just kind of random. And then you could also do that for the location. So if you want to change the location, you can do that as well. So now we have these scratches and we have these scratches, but I want to combine them together. So to combine the scratches together, I'm going to press Shift A and I'm going to search for a mix RGB and just drop it right down here. And then from mix, I'm going to change this to add. So now that we've changed that to add, I'm going to take the color and put that into color 2. And then this one, I'm going to put that into color 1. So now I can turn the factor all the way up to 1, and you can see that now it's adding them both together. And now there's double as many scratches. So that is pretty cool. What I actually want to do is I want to do that same exact thing again. So I want to double the amount of scratches that we currently have. So I'm going to box select all of these nodes right here, and I'll press Shift D to duplicate them and bring them up. And then again, we want to plug the object into the vector on both of these mapping nodes. So just like that. All right, and then what we need to do is we need to change the rotation, just kind of give it a random rotation and a random location. So I'm going to Control Shift and click on this, and we can just give it a random rotation and a random location as well. And then just Control Shift and click on this one, and you can give it a random location and a random rotation so that these are all different, and that way they're going to be placed differently on the object. So now that we have all these four, we can combine both of these adds together. So I'll press Shift D, drop it down here. We're going to take the color, put that into color 1, and then this one, take the color and put that into color 2. So if I Control Shift and click on this, you can see here's both of these, and here's both of these. If I Control Shift and click on this, you can see that now it's taking these two and it's adding them together with that add. So there we go. Now we have lots of scratches and it's very detailed. So that is just what I want. So I'm going to box select all these nodes and just bring them down a little bit, and then I can Control Shift and click on the principled shader. So what I want to do is I want to plug this into the normal to make it look like his skin is a little bit scratched up and worn. So I'll take the color and put that into the normal, and then we need to convert it to normal data because you can see that's all messed up right now. So I'll press Shift A and I'm going to search for a bump node. We're just going to add the bump node right in there. Just drop it right in there, and then we want to plug the color up to the height instead. That way it's taking this color data and it's putting it through the height, and it's going to convert it to normal data. So now if we go into rendered mode, you can see it actually looks like those scratches are bumping out. Now we don't actually want the scratches to be bumping out, we want the scratches to be bumping in. So to make the scratches bumping in, I'm going to click on the invert button, and now it looks like the scratches are bumping way in. And then also they are a little bit strong right now, so I'm going to turn the strength down to like a 0.4. So they're still there, but they're a little bit more subtle. All right, and this is also very light. So right now I'm just going to take the base color and make it a bit more gray, and then also make it a little bit more of a brown color. And you can see now that we've turned that down, the lights actually aren't that strong. So we can actually make the lights brighter. So if you click on the lights and then go right over here to the materials here on the lights, you can use the nodes if you want to, or you can just change the strength right here. So I'm going to change these up to like a 30. So they're quite a bit brighter, maybe even like a 40. So they're quite a bit brighter. So now those rim lights, you can really start to see that on the side there. Now I also think it might be a good idea to move these rim lights over a bit. So I'm going to move them back a little bit just because I want the rim lights to be a little bit smaller. And then I might even turn the strength up to maybe like a 50 so they're nice and bright. All right, that is looking good. Now also this light right here, the main light that we have, I'm going to turn this up maybe to like a 40. So it's quite a bit brighter, maybe even to like a 50. Something like that. So that is looking a lot better. All right, so let's select the skin material and keep on working with this. So it does look a bit simple right now. It does have a lot more detail with those scratches, but I want to add a lot more detail and stuff into the base color. So I'm going to start by pressing Shift A, and I'm going to search for the geometry node. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use this pointiness value to make some parts a little bit darker and some parts a little bit lighter. Now, if you're using Blender Eevee, this unfortunately won't work in Blender Eevee, but instead, if you're using Eevee, you could just use the ambient occlusion. That does look pretty similar. You can see it's a little bit different, but it does look similar to the pointiness value. But because I'm using the Cycles render engine, I am going to use the pointiness. So I'm just going to delete the ambient occlusion. So now that we've added the geometry, you can hold down the Control and Shift key and click down until you can preview the pointiness value. Now it's not very strong right now, so to make it stronger, I'm going to press Shift A and add a color ramp node, and we'll just drop it right in here. So I can now drag these values out, and you can see now it's a lot stronger and we're really able to see that. All right, so something like that is what I'm going for. Now I also want to add a noise texture just to give a little bit more variation in the colors. So I'm going to press Shift A and I'm going to search for a noise texture. Let's just drop that down here. And then also I want to take the object mapping on the texture coordinate and plug that up to the vector of the noise texture. You could also just duplicate the texture coordinate if it's a little bit far away and plug the object into the vector. And then I can Control, Shift, and click on it to preview it. Now I actually want to turn the scale down to like a 4 so it's a little bit smaller. And then I want to turn the detail all the way up to 16 so that it's very detailed. Now it's just black and white right now, and I want to make it kind of a brownish color. So I'm going to press Shift A and search for a color ramp, and we'll drop the color ramp right in here. And then we can change the different colors of the noise texture. So I'm going to drag this first one, this black one, out, and then I'm going to make it kind of a brown color not super dark, but not super light. And then I'm going to drag this one out as well. And this one, I'm going to make a light brown, a very light brown, almost like a tannish color. So just something like that is what I'm going for. And then I think I might bring this in a little bit and just make that a little bit more contrasty. All right, that is looking good. All right, so now I want to add these both together, and then we're going to use the pointiness value to make the parts that are dipping in a little bit darker. So to do this, I'm going to press Shift A, and I'm going to search for a mix RGB, and we'll just drop it right down here. Now this color ramp right here on the geometry, on the pointiness, that's going to go into the factor. And then this color ramp here from the noise texture, that's going to go into color 2. And then color 1, we're going to make all the way down to black, and you can see now it's adding those little dark bits in. So you can see here it is before, and then here it is with the pointiness, and then we're combining them together. So now we have both of them. So that is much more interesting now. So we're going to plug the color into the base color on the principled, and then you can just Control Shift and click on that. And you can see that is really starting to look pretty cool. Now this right here, it is a little bit dark. So I'm going to make it a very, very light brown instead of fully dark. So it's going to be almost black, but just a very, very light brown instead of black. And you can see that if I turn it up, it's going to make the skin more and more light. So if you want more of a light skin, you can do that, or more of a dark skin. Now this still is pretty smooth, and so I'm going to add this into the bump as well. So I'm going to select this bump node, and then I'll press Shift D and just drop it right down here. And then I want to plug the color into the height, and then this one is going to be going through the normal. So that way we can add multiple bump maps together, and then that'll go into the normal. So if I Control Shift and click on this, you can see here are the scratches, and then I can Control Shift and click on this, and you can see it's adding a lot more detail. You can see all that detail in there. Now I also don't want to invert it, so I'm going to turn the inverted off. And then it is just a little bit strong, so I'm going to turn the strength down to like a 0.2, so it's not quite as strong. And you can see now if I Control Shift and click on this, it has a lot more detail. And then I also want to give the skin just a little bit more bump all over the place. So I'm going to duplicate this bump once more. And then I'm going to take this color ramp output from the noise texture, and I'm going to plug that into the height value of this third bump. So I can Control Shift and click on this, and you can see here it is before and after. So it's just adding a little bit more noise all over the place, and that adds a lot more detail. Now it is a bit strong right now, and I do want it to be pretty subtle. So I'm going to turn the strength down to like a 0.1, so it's pretty subtle, but it still adds quite a bit. All right, so we are almost done with this skin material. I just want to plug this color right here into the roughness, and then when I do that, you can see it makes it very, very shiny. So I want to control how shiny or how rough I want the skin to be. So I'll press Shift A, and to control that, I'm going to add a color ramp node. Just drop it right down here, and then we can take the black color and we can start to turn this up. Now you can see when I turn it up all the way, it's going to be very white, and that's going to make it very chalky and dry. But then if I turn it down, it's going to be more shiny. So I do want it to be pretty dry, like not super shiny, just something kind of like this. So it is a little bit reflective, but not too reflective. All right, and with that done, that is going to be it for the skin texture for our cave troll. So now let's just do the other materials. Let's do the eyes and the tongue and everything, and then we will render this out. So let's do the eyes. So I'm going to select the eyes, and I'm going to click on New, and I can just call this Eyes White. Now because these are eyes, they are going to be very reflective, so I'm going to turn the roughness value all the way down to 0. And then also, I don't really think it looks very realistic being super white, so I'm going to make it a little bit more gray, and then make it very slightly yellow. So that is looking a lot better. And then to add the pupils, I'm going to need to tab into edit mode on the eye here, and I'm going to need to select different parts of the eye and add different materials. So what I'm going to do is right here, I'm going to click on the plus here, and then I'm going to click on new to add a new material. Now this one, we can just call this Eyes Black. So Eyes Black. And then we just need to select the part that we want to be the eyes black. So I'm going to press 3 to go to the face select, and then I'm going to press B for the box select, and I'm just going to box select this right here, and that's going to be the pupils. So now that I have that selected, just that part, and I have these eyes black selected, I'm going to click on Assign. So what we need to do now is just make it a fully black color, and then turn the roughness all the way down so it's nice and reflective. So that is looking good, although it is very small. So what I want to do is I want to Alt select this loop right here, and I want this loop to be like a dark brown color. So again, I'm going to click on the plus here to add a new material slot into our object. Then I'm going to click on new, and we can call this one eyes brown, or whatever color you want. Then I'll click on assign with this selected, so you can see now it's assigned it to that part of the eye. And now I can just make it a very dark brown color. You could of course go in and texture paint the eye if you wanted to. You could also add in an eye texture, or you could do a procedural material, whatever you want to do. I'm just going to make it a dark brown color and then turn the roughness all the way to 0. So you can see that is what we're getting, and that looks really cool. Now real quick, I think I will just add a noise texture to give it a little bit more detail. So I'm going to press Shift A here, and I'm going to search for a noise texture. And then I want to plug the factor into the base color. Now, I also want to turn the detail all the way up to 16, so it's very detailed. And then I think I'll turn the scale up to like an 8. So now I want to control the colors. So I'm going to press Shift A, and I'm going to add a color ramp and just drop that right in there. And then this white one, we can make it that dark brown color for the eyes. And we can also drag this in if we want to be more contrasty. And then I think I'll also turn the scale up to maybe like a 15, so it has even more detail. And then also, if you want to play around with the roughness, you could do that as well. So now if I control, shift, and click on it, you can see that eye just has a little bit more detail. So I can just preview the final thing. You can see that is adding a lot more life into our character. All right, so that is it for the eye material. Let's just do a very basic teeth material. So I'm going to click on new here, just select the teeth. I'm going to just name this teeth. And then for this one, I'll turn the roughness down a little bit. And then I'm just going to make this kind of like a yellowish kind of color, kind of like a slightly brown color. Something like that is good. And then we just need to assign the teeth material to all the other teeth. So what I can do is I can just shift and select all the different teeth. So just hold down the shift key, just select all of the teeth. So once we've selected all the teeth, I'm going to lastly shift and select the big tooth that has the teeth material. Then I can press Control L, and we're going to link the materials. So now all the teeth have the same material. And then I'm also going to press Shift A on the teeth material, and I'm going to add the geometry node again. I want to use the pointiness value just because that really helps to give a bit more detail. And again, if you're using Blender Eevee, you could also use the ambient occlusion node. So I'm going to plug the pointiness into the base color, and then I want to press Shift A and add a color ramp because I want to make it more contrasty so it's easier to see. And then I'm also just going to unplug this and click on the white tab, and I want to just drop color this in here. So I'm going to click and drag on the color and then drop the color in there. So I can now plug this back up, and then if I Control, Shift, and click on the color ramp, you can preview that. So you can see if I just start to drag the black value out, you can see it's just starting to give a little bit more detail to those teeth. We can also drag this out and maybe just make it a slightly lighter color. And if I just Control, Shift, and click on the principled, you can see it's just giving a little bit more detail to those teeth. All right, so that is it for the teeth material. So we just have 2 materials left. We're going to do the gums and then also the tongue. So I'm going to click on the gums. Let's click on new, and we can just call this gums. Now for this one, this is pretty simple. I'm just going to make it kind of a reddish pinkish color. Something like that. We'll turn the roughness down a little bit so it's a bit more shiny. And then I want to turn the subsurface scattering up. So I'm just going to turn it up to like a 0.1. So it's pretty subtle. But if I just kind of box select this so that you can see it, the subsurface is going to let a little bit of light go into the gums. Now we also need to change the subsurface color. So I'm going to change this to kind of like a orangey color and make it a little bit darker. And then this base color, I'll as well make this a little bit darker and probably a little bit less red. It is a little bit too red, so just make it a little bit less saturated, something like that. So you can see now those really start to look like fleshy gums. So we can now add this gum material to the top gums. So I'm just going to click on the gums here, click on the drop down, and then add the gums. So we have the gums on the top one as well. So the last material that we're going to do is the tongue material. So I'm just going to click on new, and the tongue material is going to be pretty similar. I'm going to turn the roughness down a little bit so it's a bit more shiny. And then I'll also make the base color kind of like a reddish pinkish color, not super saturated, something like that. And then let's also turn the subsurface to like a 0.1. So it just has a little bit of subsurf, and you can see that now light is just going through the tongue a little bit. And then the subsurface color, we need to change that as well. So I'm just going to make that kind of like a orangey reddish color and make it a little bit darker. All right, so there's just 2 things left before I'm going to render out the final image. I want to make the background transparent, so let's do that. So I'm going to click right up here on the render properties, and then right down here under the film, I'm going to turn on transparent. That way the background is transparent, and in Blender's compositor, we can just set some kind of background. And then the last thing that I want to do is add a little highlight in the eyes. So to do that, I'm going to click on this light right here, and I'll press Shift D to duplicate it, and just R to rotate it. And we're just going to bring it right here on the very front of the cave troll. Now I'm going to scale it way down because I don't want it to like brighten up the cave troll. I just want it to reflect from the eyes. So if I now kind of box select the eyes, you can see we're starting to see it. So right there. Now I do need to make it bigger. So I'm going to scale it up a little bit, and then let's go back into rendered mode and just preview the eyes. So adding in a tiny little reflective light like that is going to make the cave troll look very alive because it's going to add that reflection there in the eyes. And we'll just scale this up a little bit bigger and kind of move it over. So there we go. You can see those highlights in the eyes are just giving quite a bit more life to the character, and I think that does look very nice. All right, so that is it. That is the finished character. So now we can just render this and then do a little bit of compositing. So right here on the render samples, I'm just going to render this with 100 samples. That is totally fine. And then also if you want to turn the light paths down, that's going to make it render faster. So I'm just going to turn off the reflective and refractive caustics. I can turn down the filter gloss to 0, and then also we don't need any of the indirect lighting, so I can just turn that down. And also transmission and transparency, we don't need those, so we can turn that down. So if we turn down the light paths, that way Blender doesn't have to calculate as many of them, so it'll render faster. Alright, so just press Ctrl S again to save, and then we can just press F12 to render out the final image. Alright, so once your render is finished, let's just click right over here on the Compositing tab, and we'll do just a little bit of compositing. So I'm going to click on Use Nodes, and that will use the render nodes. Now also I'm going to press Shift A, and I'm going to search for the denoise node, and just drop it right in here, and that's going to denoise the image and make it nice and smooth and kind of smooth out some of the grainy parts. Now also we turned on the Node Wrangler add-on earlier in the video, so I'm going to hold down the Control and Shift key and click on the denoise, and that is going to add the viewer node, and then if you click on the backdrop, that's going to preview the backdrop in the background. So you can add any background that you want. I'm just going to show you the background that I'm going to add. So I'm going to press Shift A, and I'm going to start to search for an ellipse mask. I'm just going to drop the ellipse mask right down here, and then I can Control Shift and click on it to preview it. So I want to change the width and the height and just kind of make a big circle right here, and then once we've made the circle, I want to blur the circle. So just make it the size that you want. So now that I've made that, I'm going to press Shift A, and I'm going to search for the blur node. We're just going to drop the blur node right down here, and then to blur it, you can just click, drag down, and then let go. And I'm going to change this up to something really high, like a 400, and that's just going to blur that. So there we go. That's looking very good. So now I want to control the colors of that background. So I'm going to press Shift A, and I'm going to search for a color ramp, and that way we can control the different colors. So this black one right here, I want to make this like a very, very dark blue. And then this white one right here, I'm going to make this a bit of a lighter blue, not too saturated and a bit darker. So something like that is what I'm going for. And then also the blur here, I think I'll turn this up to like a 600 so that it's even more blurred. All right, there we go. So that is the background that I'm going for. So now I just need to mix this into the background. So to do that, I'm going to press Shift A. I'm going to search for an alpha over node, and we'll just drop that right in there. And then let's also move these back. So now what I can do is I can take this image here and plug it into the bottom image, and then I can Control, Shift, and click on this. And then I do need to switch these. So actually I want the background to be on the top image, and then this image right here of the cave troll to be on the bottom one. And there we go. So it just adds that in, and now we have that very nice background there behind our cave troll. So let's save this image now. So to save the image, I'm going to press F11, and that's going to take us over to the image editor. Now, right now it's set to render result. I don't want to preview the render result. I want to click on this and preview the viewer node, and this is going to preview the final compositing. And then to save this image, you can just click on image, and then just click on Save As. Just name your finished image and then click on Save As. Alright, and this is going to be it for the cave troll tutorial. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, I hope you learned a lot, and I hope it was fun, and thank you so much for watching. Now if you'd like to help support what I do, I am trying to make Blender content for a living, so some great places to help support me and the channel is over on my Gumroad store and my Patreon page. So over on my Gumroad and Patreon, I have 3D models and assets. I also have tutorials tutorial files like this one and artwork project files, and I also have procedural materials and things like that on my Gumroad and Patreon. Also, if you'd like to help support me monthly here on YouTube, I also have the YouTube memberships. So if you click on that join button right down there next to the subscribe button, then you can check out my memberships, and if you join my memberships, then you'll be helping to support the channel monthly, and you'll get some cool perks here on YouTube. So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in a future tutorial.